Okay, now we're in for a real treat. This is our final speaker of the day, and it's going to be such a wonderful story. Well, it is a wonderful story. She's an exceptional woman, and also by her own admission, she's a bit of a dag, and we love dags. And she has a really exceptional story about achieving the impossible, which is a sustainable, culturally based dialysis in the remotest part of Australia. It's my privilege to introduce her, and her name is Sarah Brown. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Purple House, and she's been helping Indigenous directors to run the organisation since its inception more than 16 years ago. In 2017, she was Hesta's Australian Nurse of the Year. Congratulations. Oh, if you're here, come here. Do you mind if I touch you?
No.
Thanks. Permission to touch you, ma'am. In 2018, she made it to the Boss magazine's True Leaders list. She holds a Master of Nursing, a Graduate Diploma in Aboriginal Education, and a Graduate Diploma in Health Service Management. And prior to joining the, is that enough? Yeah. Prior to joining the Purple House, she was a remote area nurse and university lecturer. Oh, she's multi-talented. She paints, she exhibits, and I can't believe it. She's got kids, 3 of them, and you drive a 1959 Morris Minor. Not still.
Yep.
Not in remote Australia. Oh, well, you deserve a medal for that, for one thing. So please give a very, very warm welcome to Sarah Brown.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to be here. Not only because I now have 2 kids who live in Adelaide, so I get to feed them and empty my purse into their laps later today. So some of you might know a bit of the Purple House story. We've had a really lovely run of late. I was on Conversations, the Richard Fidler show, telling everyone about my time as a bush nurse and my husband's out bush vasectomy. So you can still hear that. It's our podcast. I didn't know how many people listen to that podcast, but my poor fella, so I was 36 weeks pregnant with our last child, and I was running a clinic in Owenpelly in Arnhem Land, and the surgeon rang me up and he said, "I'm coming out for the day, I can do minor ops, what would you like me to do?" And I said, "Can you do a vasectomy?" What I probably should have said was, "Have you ever done a vasectomy before?" Because it took 2 hours, he had 8 incisions in his scrotum, and by the end of it he was singing When the Saints Go Marching By. But I've only got 3 kids, so it did work. Poor old Johnny's got people stopping him on the street saying, I heard your wife's story on Conversations, and John just goes, "I haven't listened to it. I'm not engaging." So I've come to tell you the story of the Purple House. And our official title is Western Desert Ngunnawal Chapalinjaku Jutaku Aboriginal Corporation. I tell our nurses they're not allowed to resign until they can say it and spell it. So that's our retention policy in a nutshell. And the history of the Purple House was that people from the most remote parts of the desert had a problem. They'd lived on their country all their lives. English was their 5th or 6th language. They were out there working for their art centres, looking after their country, passing on their cultural heritage to their kids and their grandkids, and then they were getting a diagnosis of end-stage renal failure. And they were being told that they couldn't stay on their country, that they'd have to come to Alice Springs for dialysis 3 times a week for the rest of their lives. And that was causing great hardship and sorrow. This photo is actually Mavis saying, "I'm a prisoner to my dialysis machine. It's dragging me away from family and country and everything that's important to me." And this photo actually went to the UN, to Geneva, to tell that story. So people were desperate to get home to country. And so people from Keynote, which is 7 hours west of Alice Springs, said, "Well, why can't we have a dialysis machine in our own community and then we can look after people ourselves?" And at the time, there was only dialysis in Alice and Darwin. And so when they went and knocked on the doors of politicians, the politicians told them to bugger off, that they were dreaming. And so they got together and they painted some magnificent paintings. They had some help from Hetty Perkins, Charlie Perkins' daughter, who was curator of Aboriginal art at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and Sotheby's Auction House. And this was the Kintore women, and their painting sold for $170,000. Now, you know, they talk about the disparity between men's and women's wages. The fellas in Kirikura painted this, $340,000 to Kerry Stokes. So they had an auction at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Roy and HG were the auctioneers. They worked everyone up into a froth, and they raised $1 million in one night. Now that was $1 million of independent money. It wasn't government money. No one could tell people how to spend it. So it was their chance to build a service that was based on a primary healthcare model with a dialysis machine as a tool, just like a Toyota Land Cruiser is a tool for visiting family and going hunting, and build something up from the start. And they asked me to help. So I've been around since January 2003, and I was a bush nurse. I'd never seen a dialysis machine before, so we had to learn together. But for me, the beauty was having these really passionate, I loved being a bush nurse. But these, if there's remote area nurses in the audience, you're there in emergencies, which was never my cup of tea. You're doing health promotion and education. You're also vet and plumber and all sorts of things. And I loved that. But to take this independent money that no one could tell people how to spend it, government couldn't tell people how to set up the service, and a passionate group of people, and work up a model of care that had cultural priorities front and centre of everything, was just too good an opportunity to miss out on. So I was actually on Cape Barren Island in the Bass Strait. I was the nurse on this little island off Tasmania, all that flathead and abalone you can eat. And I was reading everything I could possibly find about dialysis, and came in January 2003 to do it. It took us till September 2004 before we did our first dialysis. And the government tried to slow us down a fair bit. They thought there was a bit of risk involved in this. But when we started to get people home, it meant that folks like Naparula here got to spend the last 5 years of her life home on country, painting for Art Centre. She's eating lizard, which is being balanced on a tissue box there. And this is her painting in Paris. So this is the Indigenous Art Museum in Paris. And so people, even the whiff of hope, of being able to get back home to family, of planning to be able to get home, meant that people's health started to improve. So we started with a machine in Alice Springs, in the back bedroom of a little house, and one machine out in Kintore, and we started to get people home. And what happened was Bush Telegraph went wild, and we started to get calls from other communities, Walpuri communities, Aranda communities. So my bosses are Pintabee. They've got a specific area, but they were getting calls from other places. And my directors, my bosses said, oh, poor things. It doesn't matter that they're Walpuri. It doesn't matter that we haven't got dialysis in all our communities yet. They shouldn't have to work so hard to get this set up. If we can help, we will. So we got dialysis in Hermannsburg and Yuendamu, Kura gold mining royalty money. People could have pissed it up the wall. They gave it to us to build dialysis. And then we thought, well, we're not going to have dialysis in every community that people need to get to. Some communities have a population of 50 people. So why don't we design a truck? So I now know far more about truck engineering than I ever learnt at nursery school. But we designed and built the purple truck. And the purple truck featured on Australian Story on the 18th of February, a story about how we helped Jack Thompson, the actor, make a film in Kakadu. You can still watch it. But we built this truck, and we had the plans. We had to try and find someone to fund it. I tried to get money out of National Geographic because I thought it'd be a good story. It was too outside the box for them. Anyway, we got $340,000 out of Medicine Australia's swear jar. When pharmaceutical companies do something naughty, like, I don't know, too many free pens to people at conferences, they have to put money into a swear jar. I always knew there should be more bloody swearing. This was $340,000 out of their swear jar. And it's been on the road since 2011, never had a cent of government money. We've always raised money ourselves through various means. So our mobs say that our project is all about the spirit. It's about keeping your spirit alive and strong. So that's Nanapa, Kurumpa, Wonka, not Wanka, Kanyunjaku, Jutulu. And if you know anything about Aboriginal art, then you'll know the little boomerangy shapes are bums. It's the shape that your bottom makes when you've been sitting in the sand and you stand up. So those are two wrinkly bums. So they're old people looking after someone's spirit. We've got this on a t-shirt, and my kids would go, "You're wearing your wanker t-shirt again, Mum." And so we've spread from having this idea of having a machine in Kintore, which was the original idea when there was still time for afternoon snoozes, to covering half the country, really. We've got support services in Darwin, Alice, Adelaide, Perth and Kalgoorlie, and we've got dialysis in all those communities. You'll notice Ernabella, that's a bit hopeful at the moment. We are going to do our first dialysis in Ernabella, in our first South Australian unit, in June, and it's been such a struggle. I've been saying for a while that when we do our first dialysis in Ernabella, Pukulpa, my undies are going up the flagpole. So people have started buying me great big purple frilly undies in preparation for that event. But as you can see, we've got a couple of islands up the top end, so we can offer our dialysis nurses some time by the seaside and a bit of fishing. So we've got crocodiles, we've got desert. It's a bit bonkers. And then in Mount Liebig, we've got dialysis, but we're also these days running the aged care service and school nutrition. So it's a bit fabulous. This was celebrating 10 years of dialysis out in Kintore 4 years ago now, and it was a great celebration. And over the years, we've had lots and lots of help from Rotarians, and I don't know if there's any Rotarians in the audience, but last weekend I spent in Lismore having a chicken dinner with Rotarians in Lismore. The weekend before that, I was in Maryborough, Victoria, having a chicken dinner with old Rotarians. And they're completely fabulous. They come out and they roll their sleeves up. They cook sausages at Bunnings to raise money. We've had international Rotary projects with South Korea. This is a mob who came out and converted the old clinic in Wannon into a nurse's house and painted it bloody purple. Everything's got to be bloody purple these days. There is no significance to the purple. We had this little house in Alice Springs with a dialysis machine in the back bedroom, and in about 2006 we got our first government funding, and we had enough money when we'd done some renovations to buy a pot of paint. So I was sitting there with farty old Amy Nampajimpa, who'd been the first lady to go home to Kintore, and I said, "Nampajimpa, we've got to choose a colour for the front wall. What do you reckon?" I had a colour chart, and she went, "That one," and she pointed to purple. Now we've got purple houses and purple trucks and purple freaking everything. Anyway, this is a younger Rotary crew who came out to convert an old clinic into a nurse's house, which means that our nurse's house is in the very centre of the community, because that's where clinics are, and has far too many hand-washing sinks to be a normal house. I think they did remove the special sink for washing babies in, but it makes for an interesting nurse's house. The crew that went to Keynote, we worked out they'd come from Canberra. The average age of participants was 73, and some of them had forgotten to bring their tablets with them. They got all the way out to Keynote and had forgotten their tablets. But bless, for our mob, they're really proud of this story. And we spend a lot of time, we have a very open door policy at the Purple House, and we spend a lot of time busting stereotypes and sucking people into the Purple House vortex. This is the dialysis unit in Yundamu and Lajamanu. So in Alice these days, we have a very Purple House. So it's grown organically. It was somewhere to put a machine in the back bedroom. That gave Pinterby people a place in Alice Springs. And so people started to knock on the door saying, can we cook a kangaroo tail in the garden? Can we ring our family? Can I do my washing? And so it's grown from that. So these days we've got a couple of machines, but we also have a GP clinic 2 mornings a week. We have podiatry, exercise physiology, physio, big kitchen doing lots of nutrition stuff. We've got a karaoke machine, a pizza oven, a bush medicine making business, a volunteer program. It's a complete madhouse. You never know what's going to happen. I'm chief chin plucker and toenail cutter when the podiatrist isn't around. I've got these great Telstra wire clippers. And I love it when there's some politicians in the house or some bureaucrats, and we'll be sitting talking, and some old fella will come in, he'll sit down beside me, he'll take off his very smelly sock, shove his foot on my lap and say, come on, Kunga, which is woman, you know what to do. There's another old lady, Janice, who comes in every Friday, and she'll come through the door and she'll say, come on, Kunga, I'm looking for you. What do you think I am, bloody Father Christmas? I have to get the shaving cream out. And then she goes, you never know, I might get lucky this weekend. It is the only dialysis centre I know of where people come on their non-dialysis days to hang out with us. We've got chickens. Last year, or the year before last, we had a chicken naming competition. We made $2,000 on Facebook with people nominating chickens' names. So therefore we have a chicken whose name is Dame Egna, Doris, Hermione, Napajari. Napajari is her skin name. It means she's in relationship with everyone else in the house, which means no one's going to eat her. And this is Elsa Nova Napananka. And when Nova Peris, the politician, came to visit her chicken that was named after her, I handed the chicken to Nova, not knowing that although Nova wanted that photo for Facebook, she's not really a chicken person. So Elsa Nova sensed this anxiety and started to squawk and to flap, to which Nova squeezed and green went down her legs. I'll always have this picture of Nova, politician, Olympiad, standing there holding this squawking chicken with feathers flying everywhere while green slime poured down her legs, and she was screaming her head off. She resigned from politics about 3 weeks later. Dear. This is Pretzel, the house dog. So one of the things that people really missed from their time out bush was access to bush medicine. So they started by making a batch of bush medicine for each other, grinding it up on the concrete, sticking it in a flour tin on the fire, and then making it up and taking it to each other in hospitals and hostels around Alice. You know how smells take you back to your childhood? Well, people have stories of these bush medicines that people use for aches and pains, or could probably help with your dermatological, gynecological problems, actually. Fax me later. And so made a batch, and then we realised that people had all this knowledge about these plants that had been used for generations, and they were stuck in town. And so we wanted to make an opportunity for them to pass their knowledge on to their kids and their grandkids, but also realised that lots of other people might be quite interested in these bush remedies too. And so what started as making it for each other has turned into a social enterprise. And we're an Oxfam trader, we've got an online shop, we do, if you know people who suffer from arthritis or psoriasis or whatever, we have to be really careful about the language. We don't want the Therapeutic Goods Association coming for a visit, but lots of people have been using these remedies for hundreds of years, thousands of years for these ailments. And people were hunters and gatherers, so they weren't going to go out and pick the plant, use all this energy to grind it up, originally it would have been animal fat to mix with it, animal fat's calories in the desert, for things that didn't work. These days we use olive oil and beeswax, not animal fat. One of the favourite things to do at the Purple House is to cook kangaroo tails. So you can see the tails having their hair burnt off on the fire. So in Alice and out bush, there's a freezer in supermarkets that have got big frozen kangaroo tails with the hair still on. When I was a remote nurse, I saw a couple of people who'd been bonked on the head by a frozen kangaroo tail in the middle of the night. So the favourite thing to do is to have a fire and cook some tails, tell some stories, sing some songs, and wait for them to cook. So Daydu here, she's got a contract with the Purple House. She turns up to dialysis in Yuendamu. She keeps the nurses company. She teaches them some language. She takes them out for picnics. And at least a couple of times a week she cooks everyone kangaroo tails. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you my other kangaroo tail story, which is at the Purple House in Alice, which is just in residential Alice Springs. We have visits from, it's Overseas Adventure Travel, OAT, but they are actually all old American tourists. If there's any Americans in the audience, I apologise in advance, but let's face it, you're fair game, really, aren't you? So we have busloads of old American tourists who pay $10 a head to come and visit the Purple House, hear the story from our patients and our directors, sniff some bush medicine, and sometimes people are cooking kangaroo tails in the Purple House. So this one day, Jetta's cooking tails on the fire, and she says to the tourists, "Come over here and have a look at this." So they all come over very excited, and this one woman said, "How long do they take to grow back?" Now, the first time I got this question, I said, "No, I'm really sorry, they don't grow back." And she said, "Well, don't they all fall over?" I said, "No, people eat the whole kangaroo. This is just like the party food." And they all started to squeal with horror. So now, if I get that question, I just say 2 to 3 weeks. We'd worked out we'd had 1,000 old American tourists, that's $10,000, ching ching, through the Purple House in 12 months, and about 2/3 of them now think that kangaroo tails grow back like lizards. The other one that happened a few months ago now was Samuel had finished dialysis and he was sitting there eating his stew after dialysis, and he whispered, the tourists were coming through, and everyone's really used to it. They just show them where they're from on the map, and you know, they have a lovely time showing off the Purple House. Anyway, Sam whispered to me, "Are they Americans?" And this woman heard and she said, "Yes, we're from the United States of America." And he looked up at her and he said, "I've been worrying for you, Mob." And she took a deep breath and she said, "Why would you be worrying about us?" Which was a bit condescending, but we'll leave that to one side. And he said, that man with the orange hair, that Trump," he said, "he says he's going to build a wall to keep them Mexicans out. And you, Mob, you're going to get so lonely." It took her a while and then she went, "Yes, we've been worrying about us too." But it's such a blackfella way of looking at, why would you build a wall to keep people away from each other? What's the sense in that? Over the years, we've done lots of fundraising and we've had lots of opportunities that have come up, which has meant we've had to raise quite a bit of money quite quickly. The year before last, we got an offer to open 3 new dialysis centres in our core communities. Long story, there was some swearing, but we had to raise $500,000 in 3 months. Now that's a lot of bloody raffle tickets. But we actually raised $900,000 in about 4 months. Nearly killed us, but we managed it. But as part of that, I had a phone call from an Aboriginal corporation in Alice Springs to say, "We've been thinking about how we can help, and you need to come to the Araluen Arts Centre, the big art centre in Alice Springs, and choose an Albert Namatjira painting off the wall." And I thought, I'm never going to have another phone call like that. But I did very well. This is the one I chose, and it sold for $95,000. We had a ABC story about it, and I got where I was quoted as saying, "I'm never going to have another phone call like that." Talk too much, hyperventilate, fall over. Yeah, I'll take that. I don't care who's got herpes. Actually, so our treasurer, she's an old health worker, and there's a hotel in Alice Springs called the Chifley, named after Ben Chifley, the Prime Minister. Well, Marlene, English is her 4th language, so she doesn't know the word Chifley. So she rang me up and she said, "Hey, Napajari, I'm coming to town, you need to come for a cup of tea." And I said, "No worries, where are you staying?" She said, "I'm staying at the Syphilis." So it's always going to be the Syphilis for me. Whenever we're going interstate to talk at something, I'll say, "Marlene, what do you want to do when you're in Sydney?" She said, "I'm going to Sydney to get crabs." I said, "Marlene, you have to say you're going to Sydney to eat seafood because we haven't got much money and we're sharing a bed, and I'm certainly not going to Sydney to get crabs." In the middle of everything in our strategic plan is Nura, on country, getting people home, and that's what makes our hearts sing. The next circle out is Kurumpa, there's that wanker word again, Kurumpa Wonka, helping people to have the best life possible. And then the final one, doing things the right way. And for us, that's the right way culturally, it's the right way for people who donate money to us, it's for people who, government. Our big news last year was after all this fundraising, a couple of really good stats came out. Ken Wyatt announced that we had gone from the worst survival rates on dialysis in the country to the best. So you are better off being a dialysis patient of the Purple House than you are a white fella in Adelaide. I like that stat. The other one is that people who get home to country on dialysis have less than half the hospitalisations of people who don't. And they're going to be able to put dollar signs on that. So what happened last year for us, after many years of lobbying and being sneaky buggers, is that we got a Medicare item number for a dialysis done in a very remote location by a nurse or an Aboriginal health worker. Which is huge. Most NGOs lurch from one funding agreement to the next, and a Medicare number doesn't disappear. It's 13105. And so it doesn't matter who's the Prime Minister this week, the Medicare item number will stay, and it means we can start planning ahead for places of high demand. Every dialysis we do in a very remote community, and it's for the whole of remote Australia, so other people can pick up on this model and we'll help them to set it up. We can claim $592 from Medicare for each dialysis treatment. So it's a sustainable model. I'm nearly out of time, but I just wanted to show you this. We had to raise a year's funding for the Ernabella dialysis unit, and for South Australians, you have the hottest, most fantastic art centres in South Australia. They've now formed themselves into the APY Art Collective, and they're about to open their own gallery and studio space near the Jam Factory, so look out for that one. If you're from Sydney or go to Sydney, they've got their own gallery in Burton Street in Darlinghurst, and it's there. So cut out the middleman, they put on their own shows and are building up their own artists. This was a painting that was grandmothers and granddaughters about getting people home to country on dialysis. They donated this. We had an auction at Tandanya as part of the Aboriginal Art Festival the year before last. We raised $170,000 in an afternoon. And this painting you can see in the foyer of the museum here on North Terrace. And I love this photo. This was after many years of battling. We got dialysis in Docker River about 18 months ago. And Neil, I don't know if you can see his full smile there, but this is Neil after dialysis out on country, having a swim with his wife and a couple of other dialysis patients back at home. So for me, I couldn't imagine being in the same job for 16 years. I do occasionally bear a buttock to get people to check where my best before date was. I'm hoping I've got a use by date and a best before date, and I'm hoping that just, if I'm hoping I've still got a twinkle in my eye, and that we still, I don't want to become one of those bitter old cows who goes, oh no, we can't do that. We tried that in 2006 and it didn't work. But the things that keep me going is that there's an international shortage of dialysis nurses. We've got a queue of nurses waiting to work for us. We have lots of fun. We celebrate everything we can possibly celebrate. We try and suck the juice out of every day we have with people, and we're always learning and sharing. So the Purple House Facebook page, we're nearly up to 10,000 likes. My kids tell me that's pathetic and that I should move on to Instagram because Facebook's old people stuff now. But we have lots of stories on Facebook. But if you're ever coming to Alice, then come and we'll cook you a tale. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, look. That was fantastic.